The human starship Endeavour moved carefully through the dark edge of space. Captain Daniel Harris stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the glowing stars outside. The crew felt uneasy. They were far from Earth, near the border of alien territory. Strange signals filled the air, and no one could explain them. Suddenly alarms echoed through the ship. Red lights flashed. A massive shadow appeared on the screen. It was not one ship but many. Alien cruisers surrounded the Endeavour in a silent circle. Their design was sharp, almost like blades cutting through the void. "Shields up," Daniel ordered, his voice calm though his heart raced. Before his crew could react, a beam of light swallowed the Endeavour. The controls failed. Engines went dark. The human ship was pulled toward the largest alien vessel, a colossal flagship with glowing purple lights. The crew tried to resist, but nothing worked. Within minutes the Endeavour was trapped inside a vast hangar. Alien soldiers, tall and armored, marched forward. Their movements were precise, their weapons glowing with energy. "Captain Harris," one of them said in a metallic voice. "You will come with us." Daniel looked at his crew. He saw fear in their eyes, but also trust. He nodded and stepped forward. "Take me, but leave them unharmed." The aliens surrounded him and guided him through shining corridors. Strange symbols glowed on the walls. Everything felt larger than human design, as if the ship itself was built for giants. Daniel stayed quiet, his mind racing with questions. Why had they captured him so suddenly? At last they entered a huge chamber. It was a throne room unlike anything Daniel had ever imagined. High pillars reached toward a ceiling that shimmered like a night sky. Strange banners hung across the hall, each showing the crest of a great empire. At the center sat the alien queen. Her presence was overwhelming. She was tall, dressed in layers of silver and deep blue. Her crown glowed faintly, casting light across her stern face. Her eyes were sharp, full of power and suspicion. Around her stood generals in heavy armor, watching closely. Daniel stopped at the base of the throne. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing on him. The queen's voice filled the chamber, strong and commanding. "Human, you stand before the ruler of the Zeryan Empire. You will answer for what your people have done. My daughter, Princess Lyra, is missing. Evidence points to humans. Tell me what you know." The hall grew silent. Every alien eye focused on him. Daniel's heart beat faster, but he did not bow his head. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice steady. "I do not know why you believe humans are guilty. My crew and I have done nothing against your people. We came here only to explore." The queen's eyes narrowed. "Do not insult me with lies. Reports say your kind crossed into our space. Soon after, my daughter vanished. Do you deny this?" Daniel lifted his head higher. "I do not lie. I have no reason to. We found your daughter, yes, but we did not harm her. We saved her." The generals hissed in anger, their hands tightening on their weapons. One stepped forward. Bold words. "Humans are weak and cunning. They speak sweetly, but always hide betrayal." The queen raised her hand and the hall fell quiet again. She studied Daniel with piercing eyes, searching for weakness. "You claim to have found her," she said slowly. "If this is true, you will explain. If it is false, you and your people will suffer the punishment of war." Daniel stood firm. He knew the future of his crew, maybe even Earth, rested on his words. For the first time he understood the danger. This was not a meeting. This was a trial. The queen leaned forward, her voice sharp as a blade. Human captain, I demand answers about my daughter. Speak the truth now. The chamber waited in silence. Daniel felt the weight of the entire alien empire pressing down on him. Still, he met the queen's gaze. My truth, he said, may not be what you expect. But I will tell it, no matter the cost. The queen's eyes glowed brighter. She sat back, waiting. And so the story began. The throne chamber remained silent after Daniel's words. The alien queen did not speak at once. Her piercing eyes studied him as if she could see through his soul. Around her, the generals shifted, their armor clinking softly. The air was tense, heavy like a storm before thunder. At last the queen raised her hand. You say you saved my daughter, she declared, her voice strong and filled with doubt. Yet my reports tell another story. Humans crossed our border. My daughter vanished at the same time. You expect me to believe this is only chance? Daniel kept his posture straight. He knew showing fear would only make the aliens despise him more. It was not chance, he said firmly. But neither was it crime. We found her in danger. We helped her. That is the truth. A tall general stepped forward. His armor shone under the chamber lights. His voice carried anger. Enough lies. Humans are greedy. They take what is not theirs. You took our princess to gain power. Admit it now. Daniel's fists tightened at his sides. He felt the urge to argue with the general, but he focused on the queen instead. If we wanted power, he said, we would not have risked our lives to keep her alive. We would not have treated her as a guest. We would not have let her choose freely. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Some aliens looked surprised, others scornful. The queen's face remained unreadable. You claim she was free, the queen said slowly. Then why is she not with you now? Where is she, human? Daniel took a breath. She left us before we returned to Earth. She wished to see more of your stars. She promised to return home. That was her choice, not ours. The queen's eyes narrowed again. Her voice turned sharp. You expect me to accept this tale? That my daughter, heir to an empire, abandoned her duty to wander with strangers. Another general struck the floor with the butt of his spear. Lies. Deception. This human twists words to protect his kind. We should not waste time. Declare war and destroy their world before they spread further. The chamber filled with a low growl of approval from several generals. Their armor rattled as they moved closer. Daniel stood his ground. He could feel the threat pressing around him, but he would not step back. Your Majesty, he said, his voice louder now, carrying through the hall. If you truly believe I am lying, then judge me with proof, not with anger. I am ready to tell you every detail of how we found your daughter. I will not hide anything. But know this: if you destroy my people without listening, then you prove not our weakness, but your fear. The chamber froze. The words hung heavy in the air. Even the generals stopped. No one had ever spoken to the queen like that before. Her eyes blazed, but not with rage alone. There was curiosity there as well. She leaned forward. You dare speak to me this way? I dare because it is the truth, Daniel answered. For a long moment, silence filled the room again. Then the queen raised her hand and the generals stepped back. Very well, she said. You will have your chance to speak. You will explain how you found Lyra. You will tell us everything. If you speak falsehood, my empire will know. If you speak truth, then we will see. Daniel felt a surge of relief, though small. He had bought time. But he also understood the danger had only grown. The queen continued, her voice cold. Know this, human captain. You stand not only for yourself. You stand for your world. If your words fail, Earth itself will pay the price. One lie, one shadow of deceit, and the fire of my empire will fall upon your people. Daniel nodded slowly. Then I will speak the truth. Not for myself, but for both our peoples. The queen leaned back in her throne. Her generals returned to their places, though their eyes still burned with mistrust. The chamber's tension remained, but it shifted. Now it was not the threat of instant judgment. Now it was the weight of a test. Daniel stood in the center of it all, steady as stone. Inside, his heart pounded. He knew what came next would decide everything. The queen raised her hand again and spoke with finality. Then speak, human. Tell me how you claim to have saved my daughter. Your time begins now. The hall grew quiet. Every alien eye fixed on Daniel. Every breath seemed to hold. And Daniel began to tell the story. The chamber waited in silence. Captain Daniel Harris drew a deep breath. His voice was steady, but his heart carried the weight of both his crew and his world. We found her near the edge of a dying star, he began. My ship had followed a distress signal. At first, we thought it was only another broken vessel. But what we found was different. It was a small pod drifting in the dark, with its power nearly gone. The queen's sharp eyes stayed locked on him. The generals leaned forward, listening. Daniel continued. We pulled the pod aboard. Inside was your daughter. She was weak, almost lifeless. The pod's systems were failing. Without help, she would not have survived. Murmurs spread through the hall. Some generals looked doubtful, others thoughtful. The queen remained silent, waiting for more. Daniel's memory carried him back. He saw again the moment his crew had opened the pod. The princess had been pale, her breathing shallow, her eyes closed. His medic had rushed to her side. Humans had worked quickly, giving her air, water, and warmth. She had lived only because they refused to give up. She was not our prisoner, Daniel said firmly. She was our patient. Our guest. My crew cared for her as one of our own. For days she was weak. Then she woke. She spoke to us. She asked who we were, and why we had helped. The queen's lips tightened, but her eyes flickered with something, perhaps surprise, perhaps doubt. Daniel went on. At first she was afraid. She did not trust us. But when she saw we meant no harm, she began to ask questions. She wanted to know about Earth. She wanted to know why we lived the way we do. She wanted to understand us. A tall general let out a harsh laugh. You expect us to believe the princess would waste her time with humans? Daniel turned his gaze on him. She did not waste her time. She chose it. She was curious. She asked about our families, our oceans, our skies. She asked about our history, how we survive despite weakness compared to other species. She wanted to understand what makes us endure. The chamber grew quiet again. Daniel's words carried across the hall like steady steps on stone. I told her the truth, he said. Humans fight not because we are strong, but because we must. We rise after every fall. We dream even when the stars are far. And she listened. She listened with more interest than I have ever seen from anyone not human. The queen's hand gripped the arm of her throne. Her voice was low but clear. You speak as if she admired you. Daniel's eyes met hers. She did. Not because of our weapons or our power. She admired our hope. The generals stirred in anger. Some shouted protests. Lies. Trickery. The human twists words. But the queen raised her hand, silencing them. Her eyes were still locked on Daniel, as if trying to decide whether he spoke truth or deception. Daniel continued, his voice stronger now. We never forced her to stay. She chose to remain on our ship longer than needed. She wanted to learn. She walked among my crew. She laughed with them. She shared meals. She told us about your empire, but she also asked about our small blue planet. She wondered what it felt like to stand on grass, to hear birds sing, to see rain fall from the sky. She said our world sounded fragile, yet alive in a way different from your worlds. The queen shifted in her seat. Her eyes no longer blazed with anger. They glimmered with something heavier, perhaps memory, perhaps longing. Daniel's voice softened. I cannot claim to know your daughter fully. But I know she was not unhappy with us. She was not harmed. She was safe. And she chose to leave when she wished. That is the truth. For a long moment, the throne chamber remained still. The generals whispered among themselves, some doubtful, others unsettled. The queen sat unmoving, her expression unreadable. Finally she spoke. You speak of her laughter. You speak of her curiosity. These things are not lies so easily made. Yet still I wonder. Why would my daughter, heir to the Zeryan Empire, choose to linger with your kind? What could she see in humans? Daniel answered without hesitation. She saw something no one expected. She saw that even a small species can carry strength through hope. She saw that weakness can become power when joined with courage. The queen's eyes flashed, but she did not respond. Her silence carried more weight than anger. The hall remained tense, balanced between belief and doubt. Daniel had spoken his truth. Now only the queen could decide if it was enough. The throne chamber echoed with silence after Daniel's words. Every alien waited for the queen's judgment, but she did not speak. Her eyes stayed fixed on him, sharp and searching. Daniel could feel the weight of her doubt pressing on his chest. Still, he stood tall, knowing the truth was his only weapon. At last the queen spoke. You tell me she was curious. You tell me she chose to stay. Yet this is hard to believe. My daughter is no child. She knows her duty. She would not waste time with outsiders. Daniel raised his voice so the whole hall could hear. She was no prisoner, Your Majesty. She was free. And freedom gave her the chance to choose. She chose to stay with us. Not because we held her, but because she wished to learn. A general slammed his armored hand against his chest plate. Lies. The princess would never admire humans. She is heir to greatness. She would not laugh with those beneath her. Daniel did not look at the general. He kept his eyes on the queen. I will tell you what I saw. She laughed with us at our table. She asked for stories of Earth. She stood on the bridge of my ship and said she had never seen such courage in those so fragile. She said humans carry fire in their hearts, even when the universe seems too vast. The queen's fingers tightened around the arm of her throne. The words struck her, though she tried not to show it. Around the chamber, some generals shifted uncomfortably. A few lowered their eyes, as if uncertain. Daniel pressed on. She told me something I will never forget. She said strength is not only in weapons. It is also in spirit. She said she saw that in us. The queen leaned forward. Her voice dropped to a dangerous calm. You speak boldly of my daughter's words. If you lie, you insult her memory. If you tell truth, you change everything. Daniel bowed his head slightly. I speak only truth. The chamber grew tense again. The generals argued in whispers, some demanding punishment, others calling for proof. But the queen raised her hand and they fell silent. Her eyes narrowed. If what you say is true, then my daughter made her own choice. That means she turned from her path. That means she admired you, even when she should not have. Daniel answered carefully. She did not turn away from you. She spoke often of her people, of her duty. She respected you. But she also saw something worth learning from us. That was her choice, and it was made freely. The queen's gaze hardened. And what did you do, human? Did you try to claim her as yours? Did you seek alliance through her? Daniel shook his head. No. She was free to go. And when she wished to leave, we did not stop her. We only wished her safety. The queen fell silent. For a long moment she looked down at her throne, her face unreadable. Daniel's words hung in the air like a heavy chain, impossible to break. Finally, she spoke again, her voice low. If this is truth, then my daughter chose humans over her own blood. She chose to see hope in you. And that I cannot understand. Daniel's heart pounded. He knew the queen's pride was great. To admit her daughter had chosen another path was painful. Yet he also knew truth had begun to stir something in her. One of the younger generals stepped forward, his voice hesitant. Majesty, perhaps the human speaks truth. Perhaps the princess sought knowledge. She was always curious. The older generals glared at him, but the queen did not silence him. Instead, she stared at Daniel once more. You claim my daughter admired your hope. You claim she chose her own path. If this is true, then I must hear more. I must know everything. Daniel nodded. I will tell you all. But know this: what she saw in us was real. And that choice was hers alone. The queen's eyes flashed with conflict. She sat back in her throne, but her voice was no longer full of anger. It carried something else now, something Daniel could not yet name. You speak well, human, she said at last. Too well. Perhaps you speak truth. Or perhaps you weave it skillfully. Either way, I will not decide yet. Your words must be tested. Daniel braced himself. He knew another trial was coming. His truth had moved her, but it had not yet won her. The queen rose to her full height, her silver crown shining under the chamber lights. The time for stories is not enough. The time for proof has come. Her generals bowed as she spoke. Daniel stood firm, his eyes never leaving hers. And so, the next trial began. The queen stood tall before her throne. Her crown shimmered in the glowing light of the chamber. The generals waited, their armor shining, their eyes sharp. Daniel Harris stood alone in the center, the human captain surrounded by doubt and suspicion. The queen raised her hand. Her voice rang across the hall. Words are air. They change with the wind. I do not trust air alone. If you speak truth, it will stand. If you speak lies, it will break. We will test you. Daniel's heart beat hard, but his face stayed calm. I accept, he said. The queen signaled. Two guards stepped forward, carrying a device unlike anything Daniel had seen. It was a sphere of dark crystal held in a frame of metal that pulsed with faint light. Strange lines of energy curled inside it, moving like fire trapped in glass. This is the orb of clarity, the queen said. It binds to thought and voice. No falsehood can pass through it. Speak before it, and truth or lie will reveal itself. The generals nodded with approval. Some smiled cruelly, eager to see the human caught. Daniel felt the weight of every gaze, but he did not flinch. The guards placed the orb before him. The light inside swirled faster, waiting. Daniel looked at it, then at the queen. I am ready. The queen leaned back in her throne. Then begin. Tell us again how you found my daughter. Daniel took a deep breath. His voice was clear. We found her near a dying star. She was in a failing pod. She was weak, near death. We brought her aboard and saved her life. The orb flared with a steady white glow. The chamber filled with gasps. White meant truth. The queen's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing. A general barked, continue. Daniel spoke again. We gave her food and water. We cared for her wounds. She lived because my crew treated her as one of us. The orb glowed white once more. The whispers in the hall grew louder. Daniel's voice grew stronger. She was free. She walked among us without chains. She spoke with us, learned from us, and laughed with us. She was never our prisoner. The orb shone white a third time. The queen's fingers tightened on her throne. The generals grew restless. Some muttered disbelief, others fell silent. One general stepped forward angrily. This cannot be. He deceives the orb somehow. The queen raised her hand. The orb does not lie. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed unease. Daniel kept going. When she chose to leave, we let her go. She wanted to continue her journey. We did not stop her. That was her choice. Again, the orb glowed bright white. The truth filled the chamber like a light that no one could hide from. The queen's face remained unreadable, but her silence was heavy. The generals exchanged looks. The younger ones seemed shaken. The older ones clenched their fists, unwilling to accept what they saw. Daniel looked at the queen directly. That is the truth. Every word. I do not ask for trust easily. I only ask that you see what even your own device confirms. We did not harm your daughter. We honored her choice. The queen rose slowly from her throne. Her tall form cast a shadow over the chamber. She stepped down from the throne platform and walked closer to the orb. The light reflected across her silver robes. Her eyes fixed on Daniel, searching one last time for weakness. You speak boldly for a human, she said. And the orb agrees with you. This is no small matter. If my daughter truly chose to remain with your kind, then everything changes. The generals protested at once. Majesty, do not be fooled. This is trickery. Humans cannot be trusted. The queen raised her hand again, silencing them. The orb speaks with no bias. I cannot ignore it. She turned to Daniel. You have passed the trial. But your words leave me with a wound deeper than lies. If my daughter chose your people freely, then she turned from her empire, if only for a time. That truth is harder for me to accept than any falsehood. Daniel's voice was calm. It was not betrayal. It was discovery. She wished to learn. That is all. The queen stood in silence. The generals waited for her judgment, their faces tense. Finally, she spoke. You live, human. Your world lives, for now. But this truth is not the end. Until my daughter herself stands before me, my heart will not rest. Her words carried both warning and doubt. Yet there was something new in her eyes, something Daniel had not seen before: hesitation. The trial had not won peace, but it had opened a door. For the first time, the queen had seen a human's courage and truth shine brighter than fear. And the empire would never forget it. The chamber was still heavy with silence after the trial. The orb's glow had faded, yet its memory lingered in every mind. The queen stood tall, but her eyes carried a storm. The generals whispered among themselves, divided between anger and doubt. Daniel remained firm, though his heart pounded. He knew he had spoken the truth, but truth alone did not always win peace. Then the great doors of the chamber opened. A wave of light spilled across the floor as figures entered. At the front walked a tall young woman in silver robes. Her steps were calm, her presence bright, and her eyes clear with strength. Gasps filled the hall. The generals froze. The queen's breath caught. It was Princess Lyra. She moved forward, unafraid, her gaze fixed on her mother. Behind her stood two human officers from the Endeavor, their faces respectful but steady. The sight was enough to silence even the boldest generals. Lyra stopped at the center of the chamber. Her voice was soft at first, but it carried across the hall with grace. Mother, I am here. The queen took one step forward, her hands trembling though her voice tried to remain strong. Lyra, you live. I live, Lyra answered. And I stand here by my own choice. The generals burst into noise, shouting in disbelief. Some accused Daniel of trickery, others demanded answers. But Lyra lifted her hand, and the sound faded. Her presence alone was enough to quiet them. She turned toward her mother. The human captain speaks truth. He and his crew saved my life. Without them, I would not stand here. They gave me no chains, no cage. They gave me care, and freedom, and respect. The queen's eyes glistened, though she tried to hold her pride. Why did you not return at once? Why did you remain with them? Lyra's face softened, but her voice held strength. Because I wished to understand them. I wished to see why they fight, why they dream. I wished to see what hope means to them. And I learned more than I ever expected. The chamber grew silent again. The generals leaned closer, listening. Lyra continued. They are not strong as we measure strength. Their bodies are fragile. Their weapons are small compared to ours. But their spirit burns brighter than stars. They rise when beaten. They dream when all seems lost. They hope when there is no reason to. And I found myself drawn to that hope. The queen's hands tightened, her heart caught between anger and wonder. You admired them, she asked, her voice almost a whisper. I did, Lyra said. Not because they are powerful, but because they are human. They showed me courage without pride. They showed me kindness without demand. They showed me that weakness can be strength when it is met with will. Some generals lowered their heads, shaken by her words. Others looked away, unwilling to meet her eyes. Daniel stood silently, letting Lyra speak. He knew her voice carried more weight than his own. The queen stepped closer. Her tall frame seemed smaller now, softened by doubt. Daughter, you are heir to an empire. Your path is not to wander among strangers. How could you forget your duty? Lyra bowed her head slightly. I did not forget. I only wished to learn more before I returned. My duty remains, but my heart has grown. And I believe our empire must see what I have seen, or we will never understand the true meaning of strength. Her words filled the chamber with power greater than any weapon. Even the orb of truth seemed unnecessary now, for no one could doubt her. The queen's eyes softened, though her voice still carried weight. You speak with fire, Lyra. And yet you speak of humans as if they are equals. Can you not see what danger that invites? Lyra looked directly at her mother. I see danger, but I also see hope. They are not our enemies, unless we make them so. They can be our allies, if we have the wisdom to accept it. The queen fell silent. Her chest rose and fell slowly. Pride battled with love, and love began to win. At last, she turned to Daniel. My daughter has spoken. Your truth is confirmed. You have given me what I demanded, though it was not what I expected. For that, I cannot dismiss you as weak. The hall stood frozen, waiting for her final word. The queen raised her head high. For now, there will be no war. But know this, human, your world has placed itself in the sight of my empire. We will watch you. We will judge you. And if you fail this hope my daughter praises, the fire of my throne will not hesitate. Daniel bowed slightly, relief washing through him, though he kept his voice steady. Then let us prove ourselves not with war, but with peace. The queen's eyes softened again, just for a moment. She looked at her daughter, alive and strong, and her silence said more than words. Lyra had returned. And with her return, the future of two peoples had changed forever. The chamber was quiet after the queen's heavy words. Generals stood frozen, uncertain whether to cheer or protest. The orb of truth sat dim on its pedestal, but its light seemed to linger in every heart. Princess Lyra stood tall beside Daniel, her voice still echoing in the minds of all who had heard her. The queen slowly returned to her throne. She sat down, her crown shining under the light. Her gaze swept across the hall, pausing on her daughter, then on the human captain. For the first time since Daniel had entered, her eyes carried not only suspicion, but also thoughtfulness. You have given me truth, the queen said. You have shown me courage. Few have spoken to me as you did, human, and lived. But you did not break. You stood with strength, even when surrounded by those who wished your death. This I will not forget. Daniel bowed his head slightly. I only spoke what was right. Nothing more. One of the generals stepped forward, his voice sharp. Majesty, we cannot trust them. Humans are too dangerous. They hide their weakness behind words. Today they charm us, tomorrow they may betray us. Another general shook his head. And yet the orb showed only truth. The princess herself has spoken. Can we deny what we have seen with our own eyes? The chamber broke into arguments, voices rising and clashing. Some called for war, others for peace. The sound filled the hall like a storm. Then Lyra lifted her hand. Her voice rose above the noise. Enough. I am the heir of this empire, and I will speak. The generals fell silent. All eyes turned to her. Lyra looked at her mother with steady eyes. If we make war against humans, we make war against hope itself. I have seen their spirit. I have lived among them. They are not perfect, but no people are. They are not weak, but neither are they conquerors. They are something different. And we must decide if that difference is threat or gift. The queen studied her daughter's face. The pride of a ruler battled with the love of a mother. At last she spoke. You speak with wisdom, Lyra. Perhaps more than I expected. Your words weigh heavily on me. Daniel remained quiet, letting the moment unfold. He knew his role had been played. Now it was between mother and daughter. Finally the queen turned to him again. Human captain, you have faced my judgment and lived. You have shown me my daughter's truth. You have spoken boldly, even when death stood near. For this, I will not see your world destroyed. Instead, I will watch. I will learn. Perhaps even I must admit that humans are not what I believed. Daniel met her gaze. That is all we ask. A chance to prove ourselves. The queen leaned back in her throne. Her voice grew softer, almost reflective. You call yourselves fragile, yet you endure. You call yourselves small, yet you dream beyond your reach. Perhaps strength is not always measured by power alone. Perhaps my daughter was right. The generals shifted uneasily. None dared to challenge her now. Lyra stepped closer to her mother. This is not the end, mother. This is a beginning. We can choose war, and destroy what could be friendship. Or we can choose peace, and see what future grows from it. The queen's stern face softened at last. She reached out and touched her daughter's hand. You have grown, Lyra. And you have changed me more than you know. She turned once more to Daniel. Go back to your world. Tell your people this. The Zeryan Empire will not strike for now. We will watch, we will wait, and we will judge by your actions. But you have earned my respect, and that is no small gift. Daniel bowed deeply. Relief spread through him, though he kept his words simple. Then I thank you, your majesty. Not only for mercy, but for trust. Even if it is only the first step. The queen gave a single nod. Go, human. Carry this truth with you. The empire sees you now. Do not waste this chance. Daniel stepped back. Lyra gave him a final smile, warm and bright, a bridge between two worlds. When Daniel returned to the Endeavor, his crew greeted him with cheers. They had feared the worst, yet he had faced the queen and lived. More than that, he had brought back something no weapon could earn respect. As the Endeavor left the alien flagship, Daniel looked out at the stars. The future was uncertain, but hope filled him. For the first time, he believed humans and the mighty Zeryan Empire could walk a path not of war, but of peace. Far behind, the queen stood at her throne, watching the human ship fade into the stars. Her generals waited for orders, but she gave none. Instead, she whispered to herself, her voice carrying a mix of wonder and warning. Perhaps humanity is not weak. Perhaps they are something far more dangerous. They carry hope. And hope is not so easily broken. And with those words, a new chapter began for both species.